Good morning. It's Saturday, May 6th.
SpaceX Dragon boxes are down, and we are ready for our undock and relocation.
Station Houston on the Big Loop performs steps 2 through end in 1.602 Dragon port relocation monitoring.
Station crew copies, and we are ready for Dragon undocking.
Copy.
Good morning. It's Saturday, May 6th. I'm NASA's Gary Jordan. What you just heard was confirmation from the crew on board the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft, as well as inside the International Space Station here on the ground in Mission Control Houston, and the teams over in Hawthorne in SpaceX. All teams are go for undocking the Dragon Endeavour today and for a port relocation maneuver. You're looking at a live view of Dragon Endeavour on the Zenith port as we await the departure from this docking port on the International Space Station to another. In other words, what we've referred to as a port relocation. Dragon will be moving from the International Docking Adapter 3, or IDA-3, on the Zenith or space-facing Harmony port to the IDA-2 on the forward Harmony port. This frees up the Zenith port for the arrival of the Dragon cargo vehicle on the CRS-28 mission, and prior to that, the Dragon Freedom spacecraft carrying the Axiom Mission 2 private astronauts. We expect Dragon to push away from the space station with NASA astronaut Steve Bowen and Woody Hoberg, Emirati astronaut Sultan on the Yadi, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Andrei Fedyaev on board at 6:10 a.m. Central Time. Joining me from SpaceX in Hawthorne to walk you through everything today is Jesse Anderson. Hey, Jesse.
Hey, Gary. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jesse Anderson, a production engineering manager at SpaceX. This will be the third port relocation of a Dragon Crew spacecraft following those of Crew 1 and Crew 2 just a couple years back. At this point, the crew is suited. Both the Dragon and APAS hatches have been closed and vestibule leak checks are complete. There are 4 seats configured right now inside of Dragon and are numbered 1 to 4 from right to left when looking at the seats. Steve is in seat 2, or the commander seat. Woody is beside him in seat 3, which for Dragon is the pilot seat. Andre is in seat 4, and Sultan is in seat 1. The joint NASA and SpaceX teams just completed their go, no-go poll for undocking, and all systems are go for today's relocation. Once Dragon pushes away from station, the full maneuver will last approximately 45 minutes. While Dragon is just moving parking spots, the crew and vehicle have undergone all the same checkouts and preparations as if they were getting ready to return to Earth. Now, that way, in the unlikely event that we see an off-nominal scenario, the crew and vehicle are prepared to deorbit and return home safely.
Frank, we saw that the D2DM application has stopped working. You can close that out and reopen the application.
That call was to Frank Rubio on the International Space Station side. His job today from the space station is to monitor the undocking and port relocation maneuver from inside the International Space Station, part of the checks and balances that are built in to these delicate operations. But as Jesse mentioned, we have the 4 crew members inside Dragon Endeavour ready for undock. She mentioned that all teams have polled go. So we're counting down to the initiation of what's called the undock command. That's happening in about 1 minute, 6:05 a.m. Central Time, 4:05 a.m. Pacific. At that time, the undock sequence will be initiated, and it's about a 5-minute sequence. Right now, with Dragon attached to the Zenith or space-facing side, it's attached by 12 latches, as well as an umbilical that connects and provides data and power to in between the Dragon and the International Space Station. Upon undocking, it will separate from the International Space Station and retreat out to about 60 meters. We should expect either a hold or a smooth transition over to this transition maneuver trajectory that you see. It makes its way over to a midpoint, right about the halfway mark in between the two docking axes, before making its way to the new docking axis, also at about 60 meters. From there, it approaches inwards to about 20 meters for a hold. This is the same waypoint 2 that we see for Dragon rendezvous and approaches and dockings to the International Space Station. After all teams pull go from waypoint 2, it'll make its way in. And again, this is a 45-minute maneuver.
Dragon SpaceX on the Big Loop. We will be standing down from the 11:05 undock sequence time. We'll come back with more words.
SpaceX Dragon copies.
And Dragon Station Houston on the Big Loop, we're just trying to get some monitoring tools up for Frank, and we don't have a rush for today's activity, so we're going to catch this on the other side of our handover.
So that read up to the crew, Frank Rubio, again inside the International Space Station, has a display tool called the RPOP, Rendezvous Proximity on Operations Panel, and a series of software that allow him to monitor Dragon's undocking and port relocation maneuver, getting telemetry, and also the ability, as a safety measure, to send commands to the Dragon, should commands not be enabled from inside the Dragon cabin. As a safety precaution, you heard the teams wave off from the initial, what they call 11:05 undocking time. That's referring to 6:05 a.m. Central Time. And what that means is that's the initiation of the undock command. Again, it's a 5-minute sequence until we actually see the physical separation 5 minutes later. For a port relocation maneuver, there is a generous window built into the operations. So again, they just identified that there is no rush to get separated from the International Space Station. That window that they were talking about is the data and communications coming from TDRS satellites.
Houston Station on 2. I have good feed on Dragon docking monitor.
Copy.
So you hear those words up to the crew, over to confirming from Frank Rubio, again, a NASA astronaut on the International Space Station side of this operation, confirming that he's got his displays. What they're going to do is they're going to wait onto the other end of what's called a handover. This is the TDRS satellites that provide video and audio communication from the space station down here to the ground so teams can monitor. That handover is expected in about 7.5 minutes. And what the teams are going to do is wait until that time when we regain communications and initiate a new undock sequence command at 6:18 a.m. Central Time. Again, that's the 5-minute period that allows umbilicals to disconnect, as well as the 12 latches that are currently securing Dragon Endeavour to the International Space Station. That 5-minute sequence puts our new target around 6:23 a.m. Central Time.
Dragon SpaceX on the Big Loop for more words on docking time, undock time.
SpaceX Dragon, go ahead.
All right, so station monitoring program is back up and running. We are now targeting a new undock sequence time start of 1118 Zulu. And you have a go to raise visors if desired.
1180, and our visors are open.
So that new undocking sequence initiation start was read up to the crew. Again, we're targeting 6:18 for that undock sequence command. That puts our undock and physical separation targeted for 6:23 a.m. Central Time. In the meantime, because we're waiting for this handover period, they are able to pull their visors up. Again, as a safety measure built into the operations, visors are down during some of the most significant moments of this maneuver, including the physical separation from the space station for Dragon Endeavour. With the visors closed, the suits themselves can provide an extra layer of protection in terms of pressure. But since we're just waiting here idly for that handover period, expected in just a little more than 5 minutes, where we'll lose video that we're seeing here from space, we expect to regain that in just a short order, probably around 20 seconds to 30 seconds. And again, we're targeting that undock sequence to initiate at about 6:18, so a little bit of margin built into the handover operations.
Dragon crew, this is station. I have a little easy listening for you while we wait.
Frank, I hope you enjoy a short time without us. We should be back in a couple hours, we hope.
Sounds great.
Some great music from the crew as they are awaiting undocking and relocation of the Dragon Endeavour to a new port. We are about 6 minutes away, 5 minutes away from the undocking command. And so the crew, what you're seeing on your screen is the crew preparing for relocation. We've got a live view inside of Dragon Endeavour. And you can see both the pilot and commander in your view.
And as you see, we're starting to enter into that handover period that was mentioned, which was part of the reason for the new undocking time being announced at, again, 6:23 is what we're targeting for physical separation, so we lose video and audio communications from the International Space Station. Lots of teams working in synchronization for this delicate procedure today. What you're looking at is a live view of the International Space Station Flight Control Room here in Houston, Texas. The teams here are monitoring the International Space Station as a vehicle and seeing through the operations for both the vehicle systems as well as the crew. Leading the teams here in Mission Control Houston is Flight Director Pooja Jasrani. She's working with her counterpart, the mission director over in SpaceX in Hawthorne, Alex Kanalakos, the mission director overseeing the operations from the Hawthorne side. All teams are talking. And a correction, Alex Kanalakos is the Capcom that you see there in Mission Control Houston. Next to Pooja Jasrani is his voice that you're hearing on what's called the Big Loop. The Big Loop is a joint loop where the teams here in Mission Control Houston as well as the teams over in Hawthorne, they talk with both the crew on inside Dragon Endeavour as well as inside the International Space Station. All teams communicating on a single loop and staying completely in sync. As we wait for the handover period to come back with audio and video from the International Space Station, a little more on why we are doing a port relocation.
Dragon SpaceX on the big.
Dragon visors are down.
Copy that. Visors are closed and ground is go for undock at 1118 Zulu.
1118 Zulu. Dragon visors.
Again, 6:18 a.m. Central Time, the target for the undock command being sent. It's a 5-minute sequence to get us to physical separation 5 minutes later. That's happening.
Station Houston on the Big Loop performed steps 2 through end in 1.602 Dragon port relocation monitoring.
Station copies. And station crew is ready for Dragon undocking.
And you heard that go from all teams, from Mission Control Houston, from the teams over in Hawthorne, as well as the crews inside Dragon Endeavour and International Space Station. All teams are go, counting down less than 30 seconds from that undock command being initiated. KU or video from the International Space Station not required for that initiation to occur. And that triggers Dragon to automatically start its undocking sequence. Again, that is retracting the umbilical that connects the Dragon Endeavour to the International Space Station, providing data and power.
Undock sequence commanded.
Dragon copies.
Right on time, 6:18 a.m. Central Time. The undock sequence has commanded. It's a 5-minute sequence again until physical separation at 6:23. What's happening now is the umbilical is retracting. That umbilical originally providing data and power in between the station over to the Dragon. There are 12 latches that are currently securing Dragon to the International Space Station. They will be released 6 at a time.
Umbilical demate complete and nominal.
That first step is complete. With the umbilical completely retracted, the first 6 latches are starting to retract.
As Gary mentioned, the hooks will begin to retract. That will allow the Dragon spacecraft to then fire its Draco thrusters in 2 short bursts to break the stiction between it and the docking port and then physically separate from station. Again, that will happen at the 6:23 a.m. Central Time mark. Then Dragon will slowly back away from station and activate its LiDAR, which stands for Light Detection and Ranging. and that'll begin tracking the space station. Once it acquires a solid signal, the ground will command Dragon to hold approximately 60 meters away from station. And once everything looks good, Dragon will begin to move from in front of the station to above it. So again, we are waiting for the hooks to complete unlatching, and then we can begin the physical separation from the station.
And again, as we count down, video is not required for the undocking to occur. That handover period that we were talking about was audio, so you're hearing the big loop and the communications from the crew on board the International Space Station as well as Dragon Endeavour. Teams are monitoring all along the way, receiving telemetry and data from Dragon.
First set of hooks open and nominal.
6 hooks down and 6 to go. Again, teams in Houston on your screen on the left, as well as in Hawthorne, California on your screen on the right, monitoring these operations. We're on track for an on-time physical separation. We're counting down about 20 seconds or more from physical separation. Standing by.
All hooks open and nominal. Dragon separation confirmed.
SpaceX Dragon copies.
Great
All right,
news.
we have confirmed physical separation. Good undock burns 1 and 2. The retreat rate is nominal. That undock time was 6:23 a.m. Central Time. At the time of undocking, Space Station and Dragon Endeavour were 258 statute miles north off the coast of Australia.
Relocate burn 0 complete.
Dragon copies.
Undocking burns 1 and 2 allow for the physical separation of Dragon from the station. Relocate burn will continue to increase the separation distance between Dragon, Endeavour, and the International Space Station up through the docking axis to the 60-meter point, the point that the crew will then initiate a transition to the new axis. Again, no video from the International Space Station. We are getting data and telemetry. showing the Dragon and its nominal backing away from that port.
Dragon SpaceX ground has confirmed good RELNAV performance and will be commanding hold.
Dragon copies.
Getting great.
Houston Station on 2, ISS thrusters are enabled.
Copy.
Dragon is in command hold 1.
Dragon copies.
As Dragon Endeavour passes over a ground station, still waiting for a communication from the station, but we are able to get video from Dragon itself. This is the center line camera looking right down at its original docking port, that Zenith port that you see at the front end of the station at the Harmony module. It backed away and commanded a hold approximately 80 meters. Teams are now assessing to make sure everything is ready for that transition maneuver that gets it to the new docking axis. That hold is settling at just under 89 meters.
SpaceX ground has confirmed good RELNAV performance. You are go to command, go to relocate.
Hi, command and go to relocate. Dragon executed.
So we just completed a hold for redocking systems and alignment evaluation and got a go for the maneuver to begin Dragon moving towards its new docking port. Now this process will take about 15 minutes. And this will move the Dragon vehicle towards the forward port of Harmony and IDA-2, or the International Docking Adapter 2. You can see on your screen, the transition maneuver is what will happen next. That move from the current docking port to its new parking port.
That's right, Jesse, and that retreat got us to just under 90 meters. So to get to that transition point, the crew is actually making a slow maneuver still along the undocking axis to get back down to the original 60-meter hold point. So they're actually, it kind of looks like they're redocking a bit, but all they're doing is just getting to that transition hold point.
And Dragon SpaceX, you have a go to raise visors per crew preference.
SpaceX Dragon visors coming up.
Again, the most critical moments of the port relocation maneuver are the undocking and redocking, the actual contact with the international docking adapters on the International Space Station. During those times, visors are down, the crew has that extra layer of protection, but during the transition maneuver, they do have the ability to open up their visors, and you'll see them close those visors once again once we get the initiation to go inside waypoint 2 and redock on the new axis on the forward port. Again, what the crew is doing is coming back into 60 meters. They had a commanded hold at just under 89 meters, so they're making a slow and methodical movement inside, still along that same undocking axis, but they just want to meet the 60-meter point. We're now inside 71 meters.
You're seeing live on your. Go ahead, Gary.
Oh yeah, I was just listening to the flight controllers here in Mission Control Houston. They're tracking this maneuver inside to get to that 60-meter hold point, and are calling out some good reads. So it looks like that maneuver is as expected to 60 meters. Everything's looking good.
What you're seeing on your screen is a live view inside of Dragon Endeavour, and you can see on your left-hand side, in seat 2 is Commander Steve Bowen, and in the seat on the right-hand side is Woody Hoburg, who is in the pilot seat.
Dragon has reached the 60-meter hold point, and you are go to command relocate transfer to begin axis transition. Reminder that soft capture ring deploy will begin in the relocate to axis state.
Executing relocate transfer.
Station Houston on the big loop. Monitor per step 6 and 1.602 Dragon port relocation monitoring.
Station copy, step 6.
And with that, the command, the crew, again as a recap, the crew did reach that 60-meter hold point coming in from 89 meters, and with good data being received from here in Mission Control Houston, teams gave a go to initiate that transition maneuver. So it is slow and methodical. It's a two-step process to transition to the new axis by way of a midpoint. So from the original docking axis to the midpoint is approximately an 11-minute maneuver. It sort of looks like the tip of a triangle, the maneuver to get from one docking axis to the other. So it goes straight out to the midpoint, about the halfway point between the two axes, and then from the midpoint of the transition initiates another maneuver to get down to the new docking axis. The transition is from 60 meters on the undocking axis to 60 meters on the new docking axis. So we should be regaining some video. There it is. What you're seeing here is the feed from Dragon being fed to the International Space Station by way of a common communications panel called the C2V2 that allows a data transmission from Dragon Endeavour to the International Space Station. From the International Space Station's Tracking and Data Relay Satellite network, the Near Space Network, we're getting that video from Dragon as we move our way outside of the ground stations that were providing video feeds directly from Dragon. Everything's looking good on this port relocation maneuver so far. Again, it's about 11 minutes to get to the midpoint. Just a quick recap as to why we are doing the port relocation maneuver. Just a high level, what we're doing today is to move from the zenith port of the Harmony module over to the forward-facing port. So you see Crew 6 Dragon on its original docking port is being moved to that forward side that you see on this new graphic. The main reason is for the arrival of the Dragon cargo spacecraft, CRS-28 mission, carrying a precious cargo inside the unpressurized trunk section of the cargo Dragon vehicle are new IROSAs, or International Space Station Rollout Solar Arrays. This is part of a series of power upgrades to the International Space Station that are being planned. There's been several spacewalks to install already 4 IROSAs, which are currently installed and providing power to the International Space Station. There's planned to be an additional 2 coming up on CRS-28. Docking to the Zenith port allows the robotic arm. In this graphic, you see sort of to the right of the 1A power channel that Canadarm2 will position itself and move itself along the station's truss and reach out to grab the IROSAs from the unpressurized trunk. The reach of the Canadarm2 is just so that they can reach the Zenith port. Can't quite reach the forward port. So this relocation maneuver allows for Dragon to position to the Dragon crewed vehicle to easily move between the 2 ports so that the Dragon cargo vehicle can arrive on the Zenith port. That launch is currently targeted for June 3rd. In between that operation, we are scheduled to launch the Axiom Mission 2 private astronaut mission to the station. They will depart in late May and will also dock to that Zenith or space-facing port, leaving with enough margin for the cargo vehicle to come and bring the IROSAs to the International Space Station.
Yeah, that's right, Gary. And right now, we have the Crew 6 crew on board, and they are the crew that is relocating the Dragon vehicle currently. Today will mark the 64th day on station for this crew, who lifted off from Kennedy Space Center on March 2nd at 12:34 a.m. Eastern Time and arrived at station about 24 hours later. And so far, the crew members have dedicated hundreds of hours to scientific research in the orbiting laboratory. And last week, Bowen and Al-Niyati completed a spacewalk to prepare for upcoming solar array installation that Gary was mentioning. Those arrays will then launch this summer, as he mentioned, on the Cargo Dragon spacecraft. And the mission is the 6th certified crew mission NASA and SpaceX have planned as part of the agency's commercial crew program.
video from the International Space Station as we're in an orbital nighttime. We're now currently over the North Pacific Ocean. You can see the navigation lights coming from Dragon, the starboard green light and the port red light, as well as the internal cabin lights coming from that window on the forward bulkhead section of Dragon Endeavour. A quick recap, the crew undocked from the Zenith or space-facing port at 6:23 a.m. Central Time, made its way along the docking axis, down over to the transition point, and from the transition point at about 60 meters, initiated a transfer maneuver to the midpoint.
Dragon has reached the docking axis midpoint.
Dragon copies.
This graphic does a good job of showing that maneuver. Again, it looks like the sort of the tip of a triangle. It's a two-step process to get from the original docking axis to the new axis by way of a midpoint. Made the waypoint a little sooner than anticipated, making great time. It's a smooth transition from the midpoint. There's no hold at the midpoint. It just makes a maneuver directly to the new axis. The target on the new axis is about 60 meters from the new docking port. Latest calls from here in Mission Control Houston show approximately an 8-minute maneuver. So sometime around 6:50 a.m. Central Time is when we can expect arrival at the new axis. Again, in the meantime, flight controllers will continue to monitor all the systems and make changes along the way. Everything going very smoothly for this transition maneuver so far. Station and Dragon are approximately 263 statute miles above the North Pacific Ocean. We're expecting sunrise in just about a minute. We should be getting some better views from the International Space Station and Dragon as they start to illuminate. We've been conducting this operation so far entirely in an orbital nighttime. So as we transition to the new axis, we'll hopefully be getting some better views in the current plan, as long as we stick on the timeline. Again, this is a very flexible procedure. We can command holds if needed, but so far the timeline gets us to dock during an orbital daytime.
If you're just now joining us, Crew Dragon has undocked from the station. It first detached its two umbilicals that connect power and data, and then the 12 hooks holding Dragon in place retracted. The thrusters on Dragon, the Draco thrusters, thrusted the vehicle away from the station, and now the vehicle is maneuvering.
Complete.
As we enter into an orbital daytime, the views of Dragon Endeavour are starting to get a bit clearer. You can see the camera from one of the external cameras on the International Space Station trained on Dragon Endeavour. It's currently a little over 57 meters from the International Space Station, making its way to the new docking axis. That transition maneuver looking pretty good. You can see the Draco thrusters firing to continue orienting Dragon Endeavour in such a way that its trajectory is planned to meet with the new axis. Right now, teams here in Mission Control Houston are polling to consider a smooth transition at the 60-meter point over to waypoint 2. We're expecting arrival on the new docking axis in approximately 2 minutes. And as Dragon Endeavour continues its approach to the new docking axis, that 60-meter point, we can expect to hold at about 60 meters before proceeding into the next waypoint, waypoint 2, which is about 20 meters.
Dragon Station SpaceX on the Big Loop. Dragon has arrived at the second 60-meter hold point and is configured for docking. Confirm readiness for approach 1.
SpaceX Dragon is ready for approach 1.
Station copies, ready.
You heard that call up to the crew aboard Dragon Endeavour. Endeavour currently holding at the 60-meter hold point.
And Dragon standby for ground pull.
Copies.
Dragon, ground is go, and you have a go to command resume to approach waypoint 2.
Commanding resume to approach waypoint 2. That's complete.
Great news. Dragon has arrived at the docking axis and also
Big Loop. Approach is resuming to waypoint 2. Monitor per step 3 in 1.102. Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Station copies, step 3, 1.102.
And Dragon has already resumed or has already made it to the docking access. They did a poll, a go no go poll to approach waypoint 2 and got the go. So now they are currently approaching waypoint 2. Dragon is going to hold one final time for teams on the ground, the astronauts aboard Dragon, to do a final check before docking to the station. Now, there aren't any strict requirements to complete docking during a day or night pass, but there is always the chance that this hold could continue until lighting conditions on the docking port are ideal. Now, once Dragon is ready, it will begin the final approach.
SpaceX Dragon, visors are down.
Copy, visors are down.
And again, that extra layer of protection through the delicate maneuver of docking to the International Space Station. Visors are down through this maneuver to waypoint 2. They're making great progress from 60 meters to 20 meters. They're currently at 30 meters.
Station Houston, On step 3, please let us know when your review is complete.
Station on 2, step 3 review is complete.
Copy.
Again, many players in this delicate maneuver you're hearing.
Station Houston at waypoint 2, Dragon will briefly pause to align for docking, then automatically resume approach.
Station copies.
Dragon, SpaceX on the Big Loop. Ground has pulled go for approach 2 and will be commanding approach allowed shortly. As a reminder, once Dragon is in the crew hands-off point, retreat and breakout are not permitted.
SpaceX Dragon copies, and we see approach enabled.
All right, you can hear the...
Station Houston, Dragon is on final approach and is go for docking. Station crew, and
Station copies, and I'm monitoring via step 5.
those are good words. Step 5.
All right, lots of action in that last minute or so. The team's Dragon has a relatively new capability to pause at waypoint 2 versus a commanded hold. The transition from at waypoint 2 is, instead of a commanded hold, it is an approach prep, which is about a 1-minute pause, and you can see the resume has already begun from waypoint 2. So we are closing in inside 20 meters, actually 17 meters and closing at a rate of about 8 centimeters a second. $15 meters. Teams are tracking a good approach. We're expecting contact in approximately 3 minutes.
Meters.
Copy, 10 meters.
As Dragon is slowly approaching, we did hear a call for a crew hands-off point. That is where the spacecraft, when it's about 2 meters away from the docking port, and that means that any aborts need to be initiated by Dragon's flight computer after that point rather than by the crew. Then the vehicle will stand by for initial contact and capture, and then will be followed by a series of events to hard dock Dragon to the new port.
That's right, Jesse, and you can see that docking ring is extended. We'll report the docking time at the time of physical contact and confirmation of a soft dock inside 5 meters.
Copy, 5 meters.
Such a cool view here as Dragon approaches the new docking port.
Three meters and closing.
2 meters.
Copy, 2 meters.
Two meters, chop, or crew hands off point.
1 meter.
Copy, 1 meter. Soft capture complete.
Dragon copies and concurs.
That docking time is 7:01 a.m. Central Time. Dragon and station at the time of docking were 262 statute miles off the east coast of the United States, just off the coast of South Carolina.
Ring retraction in progress.
Dragon copies, season 6.
The soft capture ring on Dragon, you can see, is retracting, pulling Dragon in physically to meet up with the international docking adapter. This maneuver sets Dragon up to position itself in such a way to start the hard capture sequence. Really the reverse of what we just saw for undocking from the Zenith port. We'll attach Dragon Endeavour by way of 12 hooks that secure Dragon to the station, followed by extending an umbilical connection and allowing the transfer of power and data from the International Space Station to Dragon, as well as reverse.
As Gary mentioned, we will see the reverse of what we saw during undocking. First, 6 hooks will begin to deploy, and then the second set of 6 hooks will deploy, followed by the umbilicals. And this process will take about 15 minutes or so. And after all docking events are successful, then flight controllers will configure Dragon for dock operations, connecting power and data to the spacecraft. The crew will be able to get out of their suits and set them up to dry and begin operations to get the hatches back open. Now, this includes pressurizing the vestibule and a new round of leak checks. And depending on the exact timing, they have the option to have a meal if needed, or they can wait until they're back on board station. And we do expect it to take about 2 hours before the hatches are back open.
Flight controller is tracking a good alignment as the soft capture ring retracts and pulls Dragon Endeavour in for the hard capture sequence. The alignment is good. That means the next step will be to initiate that hard capture sequence. Again, 12 hooks and an umbilical.
Ring retraction complete. Docking sequence is holding for MCS reconfiguration.
Rising copy.
For those following along, ring retraction is complete. Teams are assessing the alignment and will give the crew a status of when the hard capture sequence starts with latching 12 hooks or initiating the driving of those 12 hooks to secure Dragon firmly to the station for a hard capture, followed by the extension of an umbilical. Those hooks will be driven 6 at a time. For those tracking this maneuver today,
Station Houston on the big loop. MCS configured. Proceeding with hook driving.
Station copies.
part of the delicate procedure here is a dance between the commands sent to Dragon and the initiation of the hooks and the attitude control of the International Space Station itself. Through the hard capture sequence, the International Space Station is transitioned to control its attitude on the control moment gyros only, no thrusters. With the International Space Station attitude control configured, the first set of hooks are driving. Again, for those following along with today's operations, undocking and physical separation from the station's Zenith port was at 6:23 a.m. Central Time, and they redocked 38 minutes later, 7:01 a.m. Central Time, to the forward port. Though you can't see much from this view, lots happening with some of the hardware on board Dragon. Those first set of hooks are complete. The second is driving. Again, there are 12 hooks that'll secure Dragon to station, and hard capture complete will occur once the umbilical is mated between Dragon and the International Space Station.
And the view you are seeing is Crew Dragon having moved from IDA 3 or the International Docking Adapter 3 on the Zenith or space-facing Harmony port to IDA 2 on the forward Harmony port. And it is currently in progress of completing the hard capture
hard capture complete.
Station copies.
We did hear that call out that the hard capture has been completed. What that means is the 12 hooks are now deployed. We are just waiting for the completion of the umbilical attachment. And the umbilical provides power and data for Crew Dragon to the station.
And the umbilical is currently being extended.
Houston Station on 2, do I have a go for 1.403?
Docking sequence complete. Crew Dragon Endeavour, welcome back to the International Space Station. Sounds like Frank missed you.
Thanks, Dragon. We hope so, and we hope to see him real soon. Thank you very much.
Great job for the team all around, and welcome back, guys.
Copy that, Dragon. Ground will be enabling hardline power and comm connection shortly. You are go to doff suits per procedure 4.012. We will bring the cameras external shortly.
Go to that suits. Dragon copies.
Dragon Houston, welcome back to station. And Station Houston, Frank, you got to go for your next activity in 1.403.
Copy, thanks.
All right, you heard those congratulatory words all around from Steve Bowen, commander inside the Crew Dragon Endeavour, from inside the International Space Station, Frank Rubio, and here in Mission Control Houston, Capcom, Alex Kanalakos. Now that Crew 6 is hard docked and ready and docked to the International Space Station, NASA astronaut Steve Bowen, Woody Hoburg, Emirati astronaut Sultan Al-Niadi, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Andrei Fedyaev have officially redocked to the International Space Station. So we're going to wrap up our live coverage of Dragon's third port relocation maneuver. The crew now has time to get out of their suits and begin the process of opening up the hatches. That'll take about approximately 2 hours. As mentioned earlier, the relocation has freed up Harmony's zenith or space-facing port for the docking of SpaceX's 28th commercial resupply mission to the International Space Station, and of course we expect Axiom Mission 2 to dock later this month. The Zenith parking spot for SpaceX's 28th commercial resupply mission allows for the Canadarm2 to more easily access the iROSAS, or the new solar arrays, that will arrive in Dragon's unpressurized trunk.
And meanwhile, Crew 6 will remain on station until this fall, targeting late August for a return to Earth inside Crew Dragon Endeavour off the coast of Florida. But before they go, NASA's SpaceX Crew 7 mission will launch and arrive to keep the station's complement at 7 people. So we'll have another full house of 11 with 2 Dragon crews and 1 Soyuz docked to the space station at the same time.
Well, thanks again one more time for tuning in to today's coverage of the port relocation maneuver. I hope you'll join us for next week's Roscosmos spacewalk, the launch of the Axiom Mission 2 private astronaut mission, the launch of CRS-28 this summer, and again in the fall, as Jesse mentioned, for all of our Crew 6 and Crew 7 activities, along with all of our great coverage along the way. Until then, this is Mission Control Houston.